Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. The authorities in Pakistan remain determined to root out the menace of terrorism from the country and have decided to launch a vision, AZM-E-ISTEHKAM. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has taken the cabinet into confidence regarding the decision of the Central Apex Committee of the National Action Plan to launch this particular operation to root out the menace of terrorism from the country. According to the statement by Prime Minister's office, the Prime Minister said, let me quote, AZM-E-ISTEHKAM is an overall national vision of the multifaceted cooperation of various security agencies and the entire state system. For this purpose, already ongoing intelligence-based operations will be intensified rather than launching a new and organized armed operation. A large-scale armed operation that would require displacement. The initiation of such an operation under Vision AZM-E-ISTEHKAM is merely a misunderstanding. The aim of the campaign was to decisively root out the remnants of terrorists and the crime and terrorism nexus and violent extremism from the country, unquote. Also, we have seen Defense Minister Khaja Mohammad Asif also making an important presser, giving important statements in that particular presser. We'll also be talking about those important points. As a matter of fact, we know that since the Kabul takeover by the Taliban back in 2021, there has been a resurgence of terrorism here in Pakistan. The terrorist attacks mostly claimed by Band Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and its affiliates. So because of that resurgence of terrorism, Pakistani authorities had been repeatedly asking the Afghan authorities to take a concrete and decisive action against the Band Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan. But there had been a repeated pattern of denials on the part of de facto authorities in Afghanistan. Pakistani authorities had made it clear that Band Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and its affiliates remain to be an absolute red line for Pakistan, and the writ of the state, the security of the nationals and the citizens of the country reigns supreme, and the security apparatus and the authorities will leave no stone unturned in order to provide that sense of safety and security to the people here in Pakistan. We also know for a fact there had been major kinetic operations in the past conducted by Pakistan successfully, including Operation Zarb-e-Azb and Operation Raddul Fasad. But this particular operation, there had been some speculation and misunderstanding regarding this particular operation that is going to be launched, that is known as Vision AZM-E-ISTEHKAM. Clarifications have come both from the Prime Minister as well as the Defense Minister that it is not going to be a large-scale kinetic operation similar to that of Operation Zarb-e-Azb and Operation Raddul Fasad. We'll be delving deeper into this particular developing story, and we'll try to understand the difference between the already launched operations to the much success at the end, like Operation Zarb-e-Azb and Operation Raddul Fasad, and how this particular operation could be different and what is going to be the focus of this and what could be the probable outcomes of this particular operation. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Shafqat Munir. He is security analyst. Dr. Munir, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by the participants. I'll be introducing as they join in. Now, Dr. Munir, now this decision, of course, in the wake of recent resurgence of terrorism in Pakistan. We know for a fact that in the past, Pakistani authorities took decisive and concrete action in the form of grand military operations, Operation Zarb-e-Azb, Operation Raddul Fasad back in time. And there was quite a big success as far as rooting out terrorism from the country is concerned. But right after the takeover of Kabul by the Afghan Taliban, there has been a resurgence of terrorism here. Had the Taliban fulfilled their promise of not allowing the Afghan soil to be used for any terror activity against any other country, this decision wouldn't have been.
I think
What's your understanding?
you're right, because you know there were commitments in the Qatar Accord. It's very clear. Doha Accord is very clear. Under Doha Accord, they have to have had their responsibility fulfilled. if they are not fulfilling their responsibilities, and as a result some terrorist groups are crossing here and they are undertaking their activities, certainly Pakistan has to defend its territory, and there is no other option but to take action. Why this is the last resort? I am not saying that this is the last resort we immediately use. We have not immediately used the option of going for an operation. Before that, we have heard about there was in previous government there were talks with Taliban, and as a result of the talks, some Taliban, they came here and in Pakistan, despite their promises that they will be peaceful, they will not be doing any trouble as a negotiation. But what happened? Ultimately, they regrouped themselves, they started attacks in civilians, and ultimately government has to save its civilians. And we cannot take the civilian toll, and we cannot let them at the mercy of the terrorists. And that is why this operation has been intensified. Earlier intelligence based operation was going on, but it will be intensified, and it would not be as the previous one, because we had lesson learned from the previous also, because a big displacement is also a problem when there is a migration because of the conflict, and conflict manifolds. If there are migrants, there are migrant communities, there are host communities where migrants live along. So these are there was a certain issue, then we had a lot of problem because of the internally displaced person, and that's why, keeping that in view, this time I think this is a very calculated decision that it will be a intelligence based operation. It will not be a blanket operation, or it will not be as misconstrued that it will be bombing also all around, or it's a carpet bombing or any kind of a big operation. Again, it's an intelligence based operation, but it will be intensified with more vigor and
so that is exactly the point for the general awareness of the masses, how this intensification is going to manifest. I'll come back to you to take your deeper understanding regarding that. We are also honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Maria Sultan, Senior Analyst. Dr. Maria, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Now, the government has decided to launch the vision AZM-E-ISTEHKAM. We have the success stories in the form of the full grand military operations, such as Operation Zarb-e-Azm and Operation Fasad back in time, and they were quite successful in having quite tactical successes at that particular time in order to break the backbone and rooting out the menace of terrorism from Pakistan. But since the Kabul takeover by the Taliban back in 2021, we have seen a resurgence of terrorism here in Pakistan. How timely and significant this decision by the authorities is at this point in time?
Well, thank you so much for the question. It's a real pleasure to be on your program. And as you just stated, the answer lies in the name itself. When you say AZM-E-ISTEHKAM, it basically means resolve to stability. That is what Pakistan is aiming to do. That is to show that we have an unflinching resolve towards promoting stability in Pakistan, and that Pakistan and Pakistan's state, Pakistan's government, as well as all those who have been concerned with dealing with counterterrorism in Pakistan, have this unflinching, unwavered resolve to promote stability. Now, in order to do that, we have certain challenges. Now, what are the challenges? But before we go into the challenges, I think it's extremely important to understand what is the difference between AZM-E-ISTEHKAM and what operations have been conducted before. First and foremostly, on counterterrorism, there is an absolute national resolve that we are going to fight terrorism in all its shapes, its formulations, and most importantly, will not allow violence to be a category of change and influence in Pakistan. That's number one. Hence, there is no need for us to reinvent the wheel and see that we need consensus on counterterrorism. We already have a consensus on counterterrorism. Next step is, how do you ensure that that approach is, one, sustainable? Number two, as you've highlighted, that post 2021, as we are facing this new wave of terrorism, how do we resolve with this hybrid challenge? Now, what is this hybrid challenge? This hybrid challenge means that now that we are looking at across the border territory, which is being used against Pakistan. We're looking at foreign intelligence agencies aiding and abating terrorism in Pakistan. We are looking at regrouping of criminal groups and financial networks, which are coming together and creating a terrorist menace for us. Since terrorism has become an enterprise, this basically means that it's not geography centric. So this means that you cannot turn around and convert this into a provincial issue. It is a national security issue, and national security issues are always determined at national level. Henceforth, the federal government's initiative. Now, after the federal government's initiative, then comes the administrative questions. They are going to come through the home ministries of the respective provinces, because what are the problems we face? The first problem was the question of the legal mandate. Do our counterterrorism force, which is dealing with a national terrorism, which is being, sprouting from extra-regional sources, international resources, and so on and so forth, do we have a national mandate for it? Unfortunately, National Action Plan, although was very good in spirit, did not provide that legal mandate. So it was necessary that the Apex Committee and all the relevant committees provide this mandate to the people in charge, that they have the mandate and the support to carry out that action. Secondly, we only had operational level understanding, in which there was operational cooperation amongst counterterrorism forces of all the provinces, but not actually an effective mandate, which was becoming implementable. So this is the second mandate which has been sought accordingly. Then another emphasis in this which has come forward is that it's going to also emphasize on political as well as diplomatic and military. So we're looking at whole of nation approach with political, military, and of course diplomatic. Why diplomatic? Because according to 1267 and 137, Afghan territory was not supposed to become a haven, a safe haven for terrorism. Unfortunately, that's what we have seen. And then comes the bigger question that yes, we want to move progressively forward, and if you're going to move progressively forward, you cannot end up just killing people. That is not an effective counterterrorism strategy. That can give you a little bit of respite, but then you need legal processes to take over. In order for legal processes to take over, we need our judiciary to be protected. If they're dealing with counterterrorism, not every case can be decided in the military court. So this means at a large bulk of this has to come to civilian courts. So this basically means the civilian courts have to be protected. This means your civilian counterterrorism forces have to be given a special niche, a special mandate, a special legal cover, plus resources. If they have no resources, how do you deal with it? And since you have mentioned in your question very brilliantly that after Afghanistan's, the takeover by the Taliban, we have seen, unfortunately, lots of spikes in this. This basically means that the terrorist which you're dealing with right now is not an ordinary terrorist. He is a military war veteran. So if you're dealing with a military threat, henceforth you will need military support. And then if you're going to be having intelligence-based operations, you want precise intelligence-based operations, which you're able to do that, as we had done in Iran, as we have done elsewhere. So this message is not just for Afghanistan, it's also a message to India. It is a message to all others who are using territories outside of Pakistan to destabilize Pakistan. That's one. And then last but not least, it's also a question that we are not going to allow for these safe havens to be established for terrorism inside Pakistan or outside Pakistan. So inside Pakistan, if these are foreign nationals, they need to abide by Pakistani laws, live like decent citizens, and be fine with it. But if they're going to carry out actions which are going to facilitate and support terrorism, then of course the state has to act. And since terrorism is a national security issue, it has to be dealt at the federal level and then brought in by all the provinces, whatever the issues are. It is not something that we are reinventing the wheel and thinking whether we need a counterterrorism strategy or not. We have a counterterrorism strategy, we need a counterterrorism strategy. The only question and debate at the moment is how much mandate and how much legal resources and financial resources we are willing to allocate.
That's exactly the point. I would come back to you to take your deeper understanding regarding that particular thing as far as the re-implementation of the National Action Plan is concerned, also providing that legal cover, provision of that security and sense of safety among the judiciary also when dealing with such cases, and also the provision of resources. As you have already said, they are quite hardened criminals turned terrorists this time around that the authorities are going to have to face this time around. I'll come back to you. Dr. Munir, when we talk about the difference between the operations which were previously conducted, the operations that were us, the Grand Kinetic Operations, Operation Radul Fasad, this time around, how this particular intensification in these already ongoing IBOs is going to be manifested?
If you look at already ongoing intelligence-based operation, there is hardly, collateral damage, because the focus of intelligence-based operation always is to save civilians. Otherwise, what happens, the terrorists always take refuge around the civilians so that they can have a shield, civilian shield against the operations. Now, that's why it is intelligence-based, that this shield would not be allowed them to be used. That's why these are intelligence-based operation, and these are sort of a combined kind of operation, wherein the community will be informed as well. Community will be with the operation forces, those who will be conducted. They will be well informed there are
So
concerns.
that is a very important point. When you talk of community, the community would be given the information beforehand if any such operation is going to be conducted over there. They are going to be taken into confidence. That is
They
what
will
you
be,
exactly
they will
mean.
not be told
No.
about the exact what is going on, but they will be given an kind of a
They will be
overview that
taken
there will be
into
situation
confidence.
going.
Dr.
Right.
Yeah.
May I
Yeah,
add
please,
a little bit
please.
to it? I think just to add to the point is this, that you see, after this cross-border terrorism which we have faced, once again, or people who are in FATA, in Balochistan, they have come under this terrorist influence, because they have been targeting these populations and henceforth creating this, this aura of fear. So what these operations are basically aiming to do is to ensure that your people are safeguarded, one, they know that they are secure, and number two, that we ensure that they do not face any misgivings, because the actions are not going to be against the people of Pakistan. The actions are going to be against only those people who are using violence as an element of change and to create terror and to create fear amongst the masses for their own political reasons. So this is the aim of that, and henceforth you have to ensure that your population doesn't suffer, and therefore an effective strategic communication strategy will be implemented at the operational level and then at the national level. At the national level we are facing problems, but we are hoping that as the operation unfolds and as it seems to pick up momentum and success is yielded, the net effect will come into Pakistan's economic progress.
Right.
And there are two other points with it. When these kind of operations are there, then one side there is a development agenda that was already going on there. But can we afford the reversal of the development? We have to take care of that. And secondly, the communities, those who are informed about these in that way as part of the communication strategy, they should be protected in a way. And thirdly, CVE actions, because now Pakistan is taking a lot of work on counter-violent extremism. At NECTA level, they have set up a new setup under a new directorate. So they are doing at that level also. That's also a community engagement process, that community should be aware about the counter-violent extremism activities, and they should be part of these activities. But certainly their protection is
When it
important.
comes to-
That's why just one
Please go
moment. There are fears. I was before when we switched to Dr. Saba. I just wanted to make a point that why people are concerned about it, particularly KP-based 2-3 organizations. If you look at their political interest, they feel that if they will be raising these voices, one is a party which was victim. Lot of people from their party were martyred by Taliban. They were not allowed for campaign. But two of the parties have religious sentiment, which still have leverage in these circles. That's why they are supporting them. So their concern aside, there is a dialogue among the other political parties and other groups which are on board, and that's why it's a federal decision. All federal forces are part of it. So this is a very comprehensive strategy along the operation.
Effective communication strategy. Dr. Maria already alluded to this particular fact, how crucial that one is when informing or taking a certain specific community into confidence before going into that particular area in order to conduct that very intensified IBO.
I think communication is important area, whether it is for in the conflict side or in development. That's why we always say communication for development, communication for conflict resolution. When you are doing a proper communication with the affected communities or would be affected communities, then you have already analyzed them, the communities, the host communities, and those who could have been possibly impacted by these kind of operations. So before going into communication, you already have an analysis, and then you have a power analysis. Who could be your supporter, who can block you in your communication, who can champion with you. So these kind of analysis is there.
What about those
and based on
communities
that
where religious
analysis,
sentiment runs deeper? Is it going to be?
Actually, you see, when you say communication strategy, we need to understand three things. First and foremost, communication strategy does not just mean that you go and tell the people that they're terrorists in this area. It basically is to share with the people the purpose of your program, why you're doing it, one. Number two, what will be the actors? What is their legal mandate? Henceforth, the Apex Committee's meeting was extremely important, because you need a very clear mandate with which you are going to talk to the public, and you're going to tell them why you're doing this. And then post-operation, you also need a strategic communication that you tell them, these were the terrorists, this is how it happened, this is why it happened, this is what they were doing. Because once you're able to do that, you're able to afford a closure. And in terms of whether these are religious terrorists or non-religious, this is not the state's concern. We are not here to describe their faith. The state's concern is very simple. If there is any actor which is going to use violence as a category of change and terrorism as a category of change, that is not admissible as per the law of the land, and that is not as admissible as a form of change. You want some kind of political empowerment, there is a political process through it. You want some development empowerment, there is a development strategy for that. You come and talk through that. And then let's not forget that we had local jirgas, we had local people and local councils, and that local culture has totally been overtaken by this global war against terrorism, and then the consequent effects of multiple counter operations which had happened. So this time over, you are coming up with a very specific strategy, which is going to be intelligence-led, supported by military action, and sustained through national legal mandate, which will provide you the necessity to frame it in national security, plus be able to communicate with your people what is it that you're after. And then postwards, if the government wants to give some package, they want to do some development, they have got sufficient national resources available to them. If there is no national resource, how do you do state building? You can't do state building in an area which has been affected by a military operation or affected by an intelligence operation. So if you have to regain the trust of the people, reinvest in the people, and reinvest in the life force, this can only be done if there is a national understanding at the federal level in terms of resource dispensation, legal dispensation, and last but not least, political dispensation towards a national counterterrorism strategy.
And one more thing on strategy is important. We always talk about national action plan. These are only 20 points which are in bullets point. There is no targeting against them. So I think there should be, if there is one point, there should be target against them, there should be some indicator if we really want to have a vibrant strategy, so that we can meet these targets through these indicators. So that should be operational part of the strategy.
Right, we are on to be joined by another participant, Dr. Syed Akhtar Ali Shah, is former IG Police. Dr. Shah, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. How are you understanding this particular decision of the authorities here in Pakistan about this vision, AZM-E-ISTEHKAM?
Through similar experiences in the past, and while seen in the backdrop of Army Public Schools incident, we had conducted AZM-E-ISTEHKAM, and we had successes. We were able to dismantle the networks in North Waziristan and Khyber agencies and other areas, and the writ of the state was restored over there. And the network of terrorists was shattered, and they had to flee from those areas. But having said this, at that time, we were able to develop a national consensus. If you remember, at that time, one of the leading party of Pakistan, while they had a government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they were having a sit-in in Islamabad. But when Abbottabad Public School incident happened, all the political leaders sat together and they agreed on these 20 points of National Action Plan. But at the moment, although it is a decision taken by a federal government, by two parties, Pakistan Muslim League and Pakistan People's Party, they are allied. But now, as far as the operations are concerned and actions, it's a fundamental duty of the state to protect the life of its people and to have peace and security. It is a fundamental duty of the state. And we have a constitution. We have Anti-Terrorism Act 1997. So any act which is in violation of any law or the constitution, the law enforcing agencies are tasked to bring the offender to the justice. So This is a continuous process. We don't, it has been announced, but it's a regular phenomena. The armed forces are already there under the, in aid of the civil power regulations in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and elsewhere. So, and at the same time, I would say that the reports which we are receiving, whether it's the United States Institute of Peace reports or from other countries and intelligence agencies, the situation is quite alarming. And in particular, this recent report of United States Peace Institute, it has very categorically stated that organizations like Al-Qaeda, Daesh, they are gaining strength and their terrorist activities are day by day increasing. So, and at the same time, when we take up the statistics, so these statistics indicate that there has been an increase of attacks on the law enforcement agencies, which also includes police, frontier corps, frontier constabulary. So if positive and kinetic action is not taken, and the law enforcement agencies remain in a defensive mode, then the areas would slowly and gradually drift towards the terrorists, and then they will have a level, they will be having all the field. And we will again be going towards that era before 2014, before the ZARB-e-ISTEHKAM operation. And then the situation at that time, they had been able to establish parallel administrations, their own courts. So if it's always said that nip the evil in the bud. So there is a need, but having said, we have to see, now there are questions that what would be the pattern of the operation? This is a big question, whether it would be a targeted operation or it will be on the pattern of what had been done in the past in Afghanistan, where the whole population was asked to move out and they were made.
Shah, there has been a clarification as far as the Prime Minister's office and as well as Defense Minister Khaja Asif himself is concerned. It wouldn't be as grand as the other military operations back in the past, Operation ZARB-e-ISTEHKAM and Operation Radd al-Fasad. This is going to be the intensification in the ongoing intelligence-based operations. It's not going to be a full-scale military offensive against the terrorists. So number one. Number two, as a result of this particular operation, there isn't going to be a huge displacement. So these clarifications have already been made by both PMO as well as the Defense Minister.
Said yes. While holistically speaking, this has to be intelligence-based operation. We have to go after the targets. Having gained the information about their movements, and the strategy has to be, it's a transnational. Actually, this problem is a transnational. These networks, they have their links in Afghanistan, elsewhere, and at the same time, they have their cells within our own house. So, as a strategy, as tactics, we will first focus how to break the supply chain. If we succeed in that, then we can then say, and then we can elicit the support of the people in the favor of the our action plans. So, we have to keep in mind the 20 points. Some of the points have gone redundant, like operation in Karachi or some other. But at the same time, one of the, I would say, the strategic point in this 20 point is zero tolerance against militancy. But the word there has been used in Punjab. But I would say there's zero tolerance against violent extremism in the whole of Pakistan. So this operation has to be in such a way that there should not be misgiving that it is area specific or it's ethnic specific. So the message has to be very clear that it wherever the terrorists are, whether it is in the Karachi, whether it is in Punjab, whether it is in the Balochistan, or any city or any village, the law enforcement agencies would go after them.
Right. Dr. Munir, when we talk about, as already mentioned by this particular question keeps recurring, the presence of Afghan Taliban in Afghanistan, their international commitment to the international community of not allowing the Afghan soil. We know that Pakistan did a lot of efforts, those grand military operations, but also the border fencing. It was quite a gigantic exercise. So as far as the situation within the territory of Pakistan is concerned, the Prime Minister's office statement says that there used to be, when there were grand military operations launched, like Operation AZM-E-ISTEHKAM and Operation Raddul Fasad, but the situation at this point in time within Pakistan is not that similar. That calls for a grand military operation of that scale. But what about the infiltration from that side of the border? Despite that border fencing, quite a gigantic exercise undertaken by Pakistan, we have seen unfortunate incidents from across the border of trying to uproot that particular fence. How to go about that?
I think on Afghanistan particularly, we have to understand the situation. It's not only fencing, because across the border, families are living since centuries. And that is why a lot of tribes are crying for that they are, leaving their families one side of the border or the other side of the border. Fencing also, that there are reports that even in fencing, people have their ways to cross the border. So cross-border things are not stopped at the moment. We should not think that zero cross-border people are not coming to the cross-border movement goes on. Not at that level, of course. The whole has been fencing is done, but it is not manned. It's not possible that it should be manned, fencing plus man. So that's why we cannot root out
So doesn't that naturally call for
infiltration goes on.
So the provision of high-tech equipment in order to check that particular infiltration, if the entire fence can't be manned?
Geofencing could be one of the options. We can use it, and partly we are using at the closer areas also, where there are military checkpoints. There is a sensitive equipment there, so they can be checked. But certain points are there where people need to cross because of their livelihood, because of their other thing. Even somebody was telling that if they would not cross, they will not do business together, so they will not survive. This is also their livelihood issue. That's why Pakistan has been very sympathetic to that way, and that's why many people were allowed on visa. The only thing problem is that people again, particularly from the Afghanistan side, they want to cross without visa regime, which is not at the moment possible, and that's why Pakistan trying on both ways, that extend the visa facilities, but not illegal crossing. And among these things, people come even through visa. Lot of people come for health reasons. There is a health visa. There are the other kind of visas, and even these people are reported to cross over the border through these regular visas. And then when they come here, and they have their splinter groups, and they can rejoin them, and that's why that's going on. That is why the situation is not that of the back when we had full-fledged military operation, but still at the moment, whatever is the situation, we have to tackle it. We cannot let it go. That's why we are having these kind of operations.
Dr. Maia,
which
what's
are
your understanding? Your point is well taken, sir. Dr. Maia, what's your understanding? How to put in the measures in order to make the border management more effective, in order to check that infiltration from across the border?
This is $1 million question, because just to give you statistics, all the opening borders which we have got, just from Spin, Boldak and Chaman alone, every day 100,000 people cross Pakistan, and out of that 100,000 people, only 99.9% of them do not have any visas. So average visa application is around 200 people. So only 200 people apply for visas and come through legitimate means, and out of 100,000, this is just statistics, 100,000, 99,000 people actually don't. So this is the challenge. So in this case, I think we would need to create some border facilitation centers. And in those border facilitation centers, we need to come up with maybe some health facilitation centers as well, so that we can ascertain at that time that whether these people are legitimate, whether they're going forward, and if they have legitimate reasons to go, fair enough. If they're coming for economic reasons also, fair enough. But then they need to be given some time-bound reason. We need some kind of documentation. Since you enter into Pakistani territory with no legal documentation whatsoever, we don't even know what your name is. Forget about anything else. So this basically means that you are creating a hazardous situation for your law enforcement. Then, of course, these people who are coming in, they also have to sustain in Pakistan. Not all of them would be working on the streets of Pakistan. So this basically means that they need some financial resources. Now, what are these financial resources which they're bringing? They become facilitators, abaters in smuggling. They become members of the organized crime, not because they're criminals, but because they're forced to become, facilitators. Now, the National Action Plan, when you look at it, one of the biggest misgivings which we had, we were able to carry out action against hard terrorists. We were able to carry out action against these big safe havens, which we did through big military action, so on and so forth. Our biggest challenge at this moment has become the facilitators. The people who are overlapping organized crime, the people who are using these local actors, local criminal groups, local religious, ideological groups, whatever groups you call them, and then they are becoming gun fodder for ISIS, becoming gun fodder for Al-Qaeda, and so on and so forth. What we can do, we need to document it, we need to modernize it, and then last but not least, you have to give resources to your border management forces. If you give them no resources and there are only 10 people from customs or 100 people there, and you expect them to man that, and you expect all of these problems to just go away, it's not going to happen. And likewise, there is a national responsibility by all provincial governments that they should take responsibility for national counterterrorism action, because it's not just for one area alone, it is for the entire country. So if tomorrow KPK is destabilized, tomorrow Balochistan is destabilized, the people of Balochistan are suffering, the people of KPK are suffering, it is the people of Pakistan who suffer. And we should not think of terrorism as a geography-bound initiative, but a larger context.
Let me take this point to Dr. Shah also. Dr. Shah, what's your understanding? What could be employed there as far as enhancing the border management is concerned?
There are two travelers. One, which pass through the normal trade, Torham, Chaman. There is always a documentation. You can't cross Torham border without documentation. And there, the other biggest challenge is the armed attacks, cross-border terrorism. For instance, few days ago in Dir bin Shai, the law enforcement agencies were attacked during Eid days, and some of our brave soldiers, they also embrace Shahadat. So we have in those areas thick forest in Shawal, in North Waziristan, in Dir, in Chitral even. Thick forest, so it's very difficult to man it. But at the same time, now we have access to sophisticated technology, so we can have gadgets, electronic gadgets, satellites, surveillance, and at the same time, we have to improve our intelligence. As far as movement from Afghanistan is concerned, we should have having a better data bank, knowing the groups operating within Afghanistan and having safe havens over there. We should be having by now a data on that, their profiles, their indexation, the counter-terrorism department, the other law enforcement agencies, they have their cells who have made profiles and indexation of such elements. So now it is the fundamental function of the law enforcement agency, including the police, the counter-terrorism department, to determine the links of those who are across the border and those who are inside the country, and how to break this. Then we can have a better management, border management system, and then we can't say that we will totally eliminate, but at the same time we can contain it. We can reduce the risk by adopting such measures.
Right, your point is well taken. Dr. Amani, one very important point. Let me quote this a statement by Defense Minister Khaja Mohammad Asif. After Radd al-Fasad in Zarbiya's peace was established, but this wave has come after bringing and settling the Taliban again. Right? The world is at peace. NATO forces have left, but we are still struggling. In the recent past, we have seen the US in particular expressing the unconditional support for Pakistan as far as dealing with this menace is concerned. What could be expected from the major powers, Pakistan being the frontline ally for 2 decades in the war on terror? Now, what should Pakistan be expecting from the major powers, including the US, as far as its support, assistance is concerned? We know for a fact that been some economic difficult times for Pakistan in the recent past also.
I think US has time and again clarified it that Pakistan's stance is clearly supported by them, and particularly Pakistan's fight against terrorism. And this ongoing insurgency sort of situation, now the terrorist attacks, that has also been condemned. Even China is concerned about that, and China is also supporting Pakistan on that. The issue is that these powers can better support us if they make sure that Doha Accord is implemented in letter and spirit
Doha
by
Accord
the
is, and
Taliban.
who is going to ensure that the Doha Accord is
UN
implemented?
Security
The UN Security Council. Now, it's going to be Doha 3 format meeting at the end of this particular month under the auspices of the United Nations. Do you expect anything? According to some media reports, security is not even on the agenda of this particular meeting.
Even if it's not,
It's
let's
not.
not forget something. You see, the first operation which was conducted in Afghanistan was done because of the UN Security Council Resolution 1373 and 1267. That said that that Afghan territory will not be utilized for any kind of terrorist activities. There will be no financial, terrorism. This will not become a network for regional terrorism. Now, this is something which is not something which the Americans agreed. Whatever the Americans agreed with the Taliban government or the interim government, that is the Americans and the Taliban government's understanding. What we are asking from a diplomatic understanding is, why did those 45 countries which came and stayed in Afghanistan and fought this global war against terrorism, including us, need to be given some answers by the international system? And the answer is that you cannot afford a global war against terror and then conveniently leave and making that region a global security mess. This is the primary duty of the United Nations Security Council. And let's not forget, it's under Chapter 7. So what does it mean? It means that you can use force. It means you can use sanctions. It means you can use all tools of statecraft while you're dealing with the question of counterterrorism, which may originate from, or when you're dealing with counterterrorism strategies and terrorism which may originate from Afghan territory.
So, what is the possibility of using the force again?
You are mandated by international system. The UN Security Council gives you this right.
As far as the international community
You see,
as a
the
whole
thing
is
is
concerned.
that this is a punity. This is going to be a real $1 million question, because we have obviously seen that the UN Security Council has failed to deliver peace for Europe in Ukraine. We have seen that they have failed to deliver peace in the Middle East, in the case of Gaza, in the case of Palestine. Now, if they're going to fail to deliver peace in Afghanistan, and this is going to become a nemesis of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the regrouping of all these terrorist organizations, which the world fought at great peril, and Pakistan did too, then there is a big question mark in terms of the efficacy of the UN Security Council to use Chapter 7 and the use of force and the sanctions and everything else. Henceforth, in this National Action Plan and this resolve to stability which Pakistan has announced, there is a very clear mention of the diplomatic efforts. And these diplomatic efforts are not something which will originate and just sustain themselves in the UN Security Council, but this is something also which is going to look very deeply into regional formulations such as the SCO, which talk about counterterrorism, that this needs to be a regional approach. We cannot go and kill every terrorist in Afghanistan. This is just out of, this is just not possible. So what we are looking for is regional cooperation. What we are looking for is that there should be collective pressure on the Afghan government, that they need to be a little bit more responsive. It's not just so simple that you leave terrorists on their own and you say, okay, you fight your own battles, they fight their own battles, and then what? Afghanistan again becomes a quagmire of global battles? I don't think so.
And
so,
even one more point.
There is this big question mark, and this big question mark will only be reinforced. So whatever the Doha process is going to offer, great. But what we need from the Doha process is that we need some clear terms of engagement, that this is not going to become a safe haven for TTP, it's not going to become a safe haven for ISIS, it's not going to become a safe haven for Al-Qaeda, and for all those terrorists which are going to use unknown American weapons and unquantified systems to be used for
By the way,
terrorism.
is there any way to retrieve all those
Yes,
leftover?
there is, because you see, weapons are not left like that. It is a responsibility, according to the US Department of Defense, to identify these weapons and take them back and destroy them effectively, and they do not land in the hands of global terrorists. So this is something which is bound according to their own law also. Forget about anything else.
Even if they have fallen into the hands
Yes,
of the
and also
terrorists.
according to the Chemical Weapons Convention, they can't do this. According to the Chemical Weapons Convention, if they have done it through an open pit, they still need to identify that. If they've done it through any other method, they have to tell it. This is not something that you have military weapons, you leave them and you just leave the building.
How to retrieve them? That's
They will
that's
retrieve them because they know where they've left
Dr.
them.
Munir, your closing comment,
The
unfortunately,
closing
short.
comment is that even beyond regional and international, look at the bilateral. Whenever Afghan Taliban came sit with Pakistani leadership or globally, they themselves committed that they will not allow anyone to operate from here. So at least they should fulfill their own promises.
Dr. Shafqat Munir, security analyst, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Dr. Maria Sultan, senior analyst, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. And on Skype, we were joined by Dr. Syed Akhtar Ali Shah, former IGKP. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Shah, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.